Let's talk about this week in wrestling in AEW and WWE, including finally seeing some closure and resolution to this Elite and CM Punk brawl from All Out. The finish to the main event of Full Gear may have already been revealed. Also, we have a shocking return in WWE and an interesting debut. We'll talk about it all next on the Squared Circle Psychobabble. My name is Michael Valenti, and let's first talk about this thing that happened on AEW Dynamite with the Elite. So in case you missed it, after the opening match of Wheeler Yuta and Claudio Castagnoli beating Chris Jericho and Wheeler Yuta, there was this video package where we saw different moments of the AEW timeline that featured the Elite and members of the Elite, whether it's the Young Bucks or Kenny Omega or all three of them, just disappearing from those images. And you could reference Thanos, you could reference Back to the Future. Either way, this is the first time the Elite have been mentioned on AEW television since the All Out scrum. And obviously with the reports coming out that the Elite are coming back to AEW, and some reports were even saying as early as this past Dynamite. Obviously that didn't happen, but signs that we're finally getting to the end of this, whether we're getting the outcome of the investigation, what really happened. When are we going to see Kenny Omega, the Bucks, and even CM Punk back in AEW? If that ever happens, we're finally seeing something in the right direction. I think what this video package showed is that the Elite will be coming back, but in a repackaged sense. They will not be known as the Elite. Maybe they just go out there and they're Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. Maybe they want to get rid of the past and just focus on the future. And I think this was a great way to kind of tell everybody something is going to happen. Forget about the past. We're focused on the future now. And it was a decent video package that got everybody talking about it. And that's what you want from, if you're AEW right now, any kind of positive twist you could turn on this very negative situation, that's definitely going to be it. And I'd like to see where this goes. Week in and week out. Let this build. I know some people want to see them back. I know people want to see Kenny Omega back. I know they want to see the Young Bucks back. But let it progress. I actually would hold them back all the way to Full Gear and let them be revealed and return there and get everybody buzzing about Full Gear at that point. But that's still 2-3 weeks ahead. Can they do it? I think so. Why not? But the other thing people are talking about from AEW Dynamite this past week is, again, the story progression of one Maxwell Jacob Friedman. He goes on an interview with Renee Paquette, and there were moments where he said some things about being a babyface, and there's moments where he said some things that could make him a heel again, and it's just this conflicted story of Maxwell Jacob Friedman. Is he willing to be the baby face that the fans kind of want to push him towards, or is he just going to be the chicken shit heel that we all know he is and kind of love him for? So the thing that I brought out, or I noticed in this promo, was the fact that he promised he will not use the Dynamite ring. Okay. And of course, we saw Stokely Hathaway get in here and offer to take out Jon Moxley, and MJF be like, if you try to take him out, I will fire you. And that was part of what happened to close out AEW Dynamite after Jon Moxley successfully retains the AEW World Championship in a very good match against Penta. You see the Firm attack Jon Moxley, and MJF comes out and he looks like, should I go in there and save Jon Moxley because I want him at 100%? Or do I let the Firm beat him down? He goes back and forth and back and forth and finally goes out there, goes for the save, and the crowd goes nuts for him. He goes to Stokely Hathaway and fires him. After that, the Firm, they beat up MJF. Everyone, including Ethan Page with the boot to the face, the Gun Club get involved, Lee Moriarty's getting involved, before W. Morrissey eventually puts him through a table, and that is the closing shot of AEW Dynamite this week. I think they have revealed the finish to Full Gear between Jon Moxley and MJF with this. And the reason I say that is, remember the last time these two faced off with each other over 2 years ago at All Out 2020. Part of the story in that feud at the time was that Jon Moxley could not use the paradigm shift. It was banned from the match. And because the ref didn't see it, Jon Moxley used the paradigm shift and eventually beat MJF in the World Championship match. And there was really no follow-up to that match after that show. Moxley went and did his thing. MJF went and did his thing. And here we are over 2 years later. And MJF says he's not going to use the Dynamite ring, and he promises not to use the AEW Dynamite ring. We know MJF. We know the character. We know he kind of says one thing and does another, your typical heel thing. I know everybody is kind of pushing for this babyface turn, or at least some people. I shouldn't say everybody. A good majority of people are pushing for this babyface turn, want to see him be like the face of pro wrestling. But honestly, as soon as I heard that, that's the finish that we're going to see, because the ref is going to get knocked out some way. The Firm is going to be involved. They're going to be in cahoots with MJF, and that's kind of why he was attacked, to kind of throw you off the scent of this. And while MJF is working the match clean throughout Full Gear, there's going to be a moment the ref gets knocked out. The Firm come in, they attacked MJF, and Stokely Hathaway slips the Dynamite ring into MJF. Boom. It's Moxley. 1, 2, 3. Your new AEW World Champion is Maxwell Jacob Freeman. Now, is that necessarily a bad thing? No, because sometimes, even though it's predictable, the execution is where the story is made. And while it's absolutely predictable, it's perfect for this story of this conflicted devil and MJF, where no matter what, he is going to win that World Heavyweight Championship that everybody wants him to have. And while the crowd might, hate him for being a heel, they also might love him for doing the heelish thing, because that's what they're known for. And that the heelish things that he does is what's gotten the fans behind him all of a sudden. So I'd be interested to see what happens in the near future with this. And I think, honestly, we have seen the main event finish come before our eyes on this specific episode. And we'll see on November 19th in Newark if that comes to fruition. The other thing that happened on AEW Dynamite this week, after the loss in the first match, Chris Jericho getting pinned by Claudio Castagnoli, we get an interview backstage with the Jericho Appreciation Society, and Chris Jericho issues an open challenge to any former Ring of Honor champion. And of course, this brings up the speculations of who's it going to be, the predictions that are going to happen. And to me, I think there's 5 possible people that can answer this open challenge. And no, none of them are going to be CM Punk. Although, imagine if that's the way they bring back CM Punk. If all this, stuff with the All Out Brawl ends up, everybody comes back, everybody has their whatever suspensions, and they do their time, and no one's contract gets bought out, CM Punk comes back. This is the way they do it. It would be a very interesting reaction from the crowd. Do they boo the hell out of CM Punk? Do they pop because it's CM Punk? Do they say, oh my God, we all got worked in this whole thing because we never knew any information of it and everybody comes back anyway? I don't know. I think that is more of a what if situation. I don't think that's the case, but here are the 5 people I think could answer the Ring of Honor Open Challenge, or the Ring of Honor World Championship Open Challenge. First off, you have the obvious, Claudio Castagnoli. The dude just pinned Chris Jericho in the tag team match, so he knows he could beat Chris Jericho one way or another, even though you could say he didn't really win clean this past week. But nonetheless, Jericho's pinned him once, Claudio's pinned him once, and this is the way to be the quote-unquote rubber match of the 3. Makes a lot of sense. And seeing that Claudio is technically a former World Ring of Honor champion going up against Chris Jericho, makes sense to have him answer the call. Next up, I would say, is Bandito, who would be another obvious recent Ring of Honor champion, a guy who, according to reports, signed with All Elite Wrestling, and we have not really seen him since, what was it, a couple weeks ago when he had that really good match in the main event, and that led him to be signed to AEW. I don't think we've seen him since the news broke that he signed with All Elite Wrestling. So this would be a great way to introduce him back to AEW programming, and he doesn't necessarily have to win the match, but have another good showing and showcase him. And I think he'll be part of more of the Ring of Honor plans once Ring of Honor, becomes a weekly television show, presumably in 2023. The next one I'll say, this is kind of a long shot given his age, given his injuries, but with the storyline, maybe he has one last match. That's Jerry Lynn. It could be possible that we see Jerry Lynn back in the ring for a one-time final match against Chris Jericho for the Ring of Honor World Championship. And I only say this more for storyline purposes. That is because due to his neck injuries, you had Jericho lay a pile driver on him a couple weeks ago. And perhaps, Jerry Lynn wants to go after that World Championship, answer the open challenge, and go after Jericho, a guy who, attacked him when he has all these neck injuries with a pile driver. So maybe that happens. Next up, former Ring of Honor World Champion Kyle O'Reilly. Where has Kyle O'Reilly been since the attack on the Young Bucks? What was that, a couple months ago? We haven't, obviously Bobby Fish is gone. Adam Cole is injured. And Kyle O'Reilly kind of disappeared. I don't know if it's because he's hurt himself or they just have nothing in plans for him because of Adam Cole's injury and Bobby Fish leaving. What do you do with Kyle O'Reilly? I think he is hurt, though, and I'm sure people in the Babble section will tell me whether or not that's true, but this would be a great way to reintroduce him to AEW programming, and maybe he's part of the Ring of Honor plans when they go to weekly television. And I think that's really what all these challenges that Chris Jericho is going to have with the Ring of Honor Championship, going against former Ring of Honor World Champions, kind of showcase them, put them on national television, and just help them get that TV deal if it's not in place yet. And of course, the last one, Adam Cole, baby. It's been a very long time since we've seen him in a match. Obviously, he was in the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship Fatal 4-Way match at Forbidden Door, and I believe that is the last time he's been in a match in AEW due to the concussion that he had, and it's been quite a long time to have a concussion. I'm not saying, concussions can last that long, but that's got to be a severe injury if you're having a concussion for that long. And I think it's time to bring him back. And maybe he answers that call on Rampage and to promote the match on AEW Dynamite. And I think that probably is the best case scenario if it's not a rematch with Claudio Castagnoli. Obviously, you could bring back Bryan Danielson, but we've already seen that 3 times. And Jericho won that feud 2-1. And looking at the list of Ring of Honor World Champions, who else could it really be? Maybe Samoa Joe, but why have Jericho beat him when he's the World TV Champion? Jay Lethal, who is already scheduled to have a match with Darby. I don't think he's going to pull double duty. That wouldn't make sense. And then everybody else is signed somewhere else, it seems like, or not really a likely candidate to challenge Chris Jericho at this point. But maybe we get surprised. Maybe it's Loki. Who knows? But let's switch things over to WWE now. And we'll start with WWE Raw, the main event of what I think was kind of a meh Raw this week. Bayley versus Bianca Belair. And it was a non-title match, which kind of made you believe that Bayley was going to win anyway. But part of the reason why Bayley wins is because we get a returning Nikki Cross, not Nikki ASH. She comes out, does a crossbody onto Dakota Kai, onto Io Sky, onto the referee, knocks him out. Then Nikki Cross attacks Bianca Belair and helps Bayley win the match, but then she attacks Bayley herself, and the closing shot is Nikki Cross, staring into the camera, acting like the Nikki Cross we remember from Sanity. So the question now is, obviously she's inserted herself into this storyline. Whose side is she on? Is she Team Bianca? Is she Team Bayley? Is it, just Team Nikki, and she just wants to go after the Raw Women's Championship and establish her as a challenger, which I think the Raw Women's Championship kind of needs that right now because there's really no one outside of Bayley. And if they want to kind of progress that storyline with Bayley and Bianca, obviously Bayley had to win this match, and this is a good way to do that, but also establish another challenger in the making with Nikki Cross. Now, of course, the other person you could ask is this the return of Sanity? I don't know Eric Young's contract status with Impact Wrestling off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure he's a free agent or could be close to a free agent if he's still in Impact. I don't follow Impact Wrestling. I openly admit that, but I'm pretty sure he's close to being done with them if he's not done already. Alexander Wolf and Killian Dane, I'm pretty sure they're not doing anything signed anywhere if they're doing independent dates, whatever the case may be. And of course, Nikki Cross coming back as the Sanity version of Nikki Cross. Perhaps this is the return of Sanity. And if that's the case, maybe we see a future, program in lines with the Judgment Day and Sanity. You got 3 guys and 1 woman in Sanity. You got 3 guys and 1 woman in the Judgment Day. I'm not saying that's the War Games match, but maybe post Survivor Series, post War Games, if they bring everybody back from Sanity, that'd be a good faction warfare in the mid card. And speaking of factions and 3 guys and 1 woman, there's another faction that now has 3 guys and 1 woman in NXT, and that is the Schism. Joe Gacy, the Grizzled Young Veterans. I don't even know what they're called in NXT. I think one of them is Rip Fowler, and I can't remember the other one off the top of my head. I apologize, but the other member was revealed as Ava Raine, and if you guys don't know who that is Simone Johnson, The Rock's daughter, and this is how they introduce her. They kind of unmask her, and she is staring in the camera. She's got a red eye on one, I think her left eye. And a lot of people are questioning this. Like, you open it up, like she's, put her in the bloodline. If she's going to be introduced, why not put her in the bloodline? First off, that's a lot of pressure to put on Ava Raine. It's already pressure enough to be the first 4th generation wrestler with the history that they have when you have The Rock and Rocky Johnson and Pierre Maivia, and you got to go in and kind of follow in those footsteps. It would literally be the same thing that we got with Rocky Maivia. All that pressure going in and being force-fed and the crowd turning on her. Let her do her own thing. And while the gimmick is not good, we all can admit the gimmick is not good with Joe Gacy, and the gimmick is not good with the Schism. And honestly, the Grizzled Young Veterans really should break out of this and become the Grizzled Young Veterans, go to the main roster and help build that tag team division, regardless of what division or what roster they go on, SmackDown or Raw. I think this would be good for Ava Raine because you have very good guys who could work characters that necessarily aren't good and do the best they can with it, but they're also good wrestlers in the ring, and she can learn from them. So while she's still very, very green, this definitely helps her in that she can learn from these guys so that when she breaks on her own and goes to the main roster, and that hopefully helps her become at least a very successful main roster talent. It's early on. I don't think she ends up being The Rock. That would be, a very high bar to cross. And, it's interesting. Let's just put it that way. It's an interesting debut. I know a lot of people question it, but it might be the right move so that she could do her own thing and kind of deviate herself from The Rock and deviate herself from Rocky Johnson and Pierre Maivia and let her do her own thing and develop Ava Raine. Just like The Rock kind of couldn't do with Rocky Maivia before he eventually became The Rock and became his own thing and became the superstar we all know and love. But I want to close things off with SmackDown last week and the way that show closed out. And basically Logan Paul comes out, cuts a promo. The typical story that we've seen with this thing is All it's going to take, Logan Paul, is that one lucky punch, and he beats Roman Reigns and ends the near 800-day reign as WWE Undisputed Universal Champion. Obviously, a lot of people already written him off. He's not going to win this thing, but we do see Jey Uso attack Logan Paul from behind. Sami Zayn comes in, try to talk some sense into Jey Uso. Don't do this. This is coming from the tribal chief. While they're communicating, and Sami's trying to be the peacemaker here and calm Jey down, Logan Paul is able to knock out Jey Uso with one lucky punch. That's all it's going to take, folks, and that's the story. It's so simple, yet effective. And I understand this might not be the best world title feud, but given the limitations that we have, that we don't see Roman Reigns every week, we don't see Logan Paul every week, and quite frankly, we know Roman Reigns is going to win this match. If they tell the story of all it's going to take is one lucky punch, you're going to have people, not the diehard wrestling fan, but those that are just watching for Logan Paul, think to themselves, hey, this guy went the distance with Floyd Mayweather. It's possible this guy could knock out Roman Reigns and win this match. That's the casual fan. That's the non-wrestling fan that is just coming in, watching this for the first time and watching only because of Logan Paul. Granted, Roman Reigns is, 265 pounds, former football player, and longest reigning Universal Champion, whatever all the accolades he's done. So we all see it as wrestling fans. That's not going to happen. But Rocky Balboa went the distance against Apollo Creed. And that's basically the story they're telling here. That's the story they're telling here. It's Rocky versus Apollo. In the first match, Rocky went the distance. And in the second match, Rocky beat Apollo Creed. Despite the height advantage, despite the weight advantage, Rocky still beat Apollo Creed in the second Rocky. And they're telling you, hey, it could happen. I don't see it happening. You don't see it happening. But let me know in the Babble section what you guys thought of anything that we saw on AEW Dynamite, on Raw, or on SmackDown this week. And if you like this episode, give us the 1, 2, 3. 1, like this video. 2, be a part of the Babble section by subscribing. And 3, ring that bell so you don't miss another episode. And we'll see you on the next Squared Circle Zygo Babble.